development area plans, and welcome, we've got Kevin and Paul. Yes, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the absence of Andrew Dixon, I thought I'd sit next to Kevin and answer any questions that might be of a planning nature as they came up, but I'll hand over to Kevin to give an overview of the report and take any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. So the report, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look over it, is in relation to a contract for development area plans for FDA 1 and 2, and in relation to additional funding that's needed for that, because it was the initial funding estimates were a bit undershot. So for this financial year, some additional funds are necessary to be approved. So this is for FDAs 1 and 2, which are Northern Timaru on the north side of Pages Road. They're identified in the proposed district plan as 2-year priority areas for residential development. The 2 areas have capacity for an estimated 800 residential units across both areas. FDA 1 is a 2-year, FDA 2 is technically a 5-year priority area, but since they're in the same drainage catchment, effectively, they've been identified that it's worth doing one development area plan for both those areas, to cross both those residential areas. So there's a contract, the contract to be progressed has been identified that Plans Consulting from the tender process was identified as the preferred supplier, and part of the recommendation is that be accepted, that preferred supplier be accepted as well. So is there any questions?
I'm sure there will be. So just around the tender process, for me, quite a range as far as pricing, which is fascinating, actually, the range of pricing. Mm-hmm. $500,000 in that. And then, are you able to let us know, my concern, I guess, is Plans is out of town consultant company?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just interested to how far short were the local companies as far as their weighted average?
The weighted average, really, the scores wise, they were quite, or I guess the non-price scores were quite similar. But then when it came to the pricing attributes, there was a reasonable difference between the two.
Thank you. Sorry, was it you, Councillor Booth? Yep. And sorry, Councillor Booth, just because you're such a softly spoken individual, can you just pull your microphone down a little bit? Perfect.
Like
Thank
that.
you.
Okay. So I guess we're going to spend money on on what we need to do to bring these areas into use or enable them. Have we had, like, the people that actually own the property now? Are they contributing towards this, or are we still relying on them to actually do the further development when they see fit, or do it at all? Or, I mean, it seems like we're spending a whole lot of money here and without any commitment from the people who actually own the property. And yeah, so is that how it works?
So with the proposed plan, we have a policy where there was a policy proposed, I guess, where the council will organize the development area plans based on that priority list that's identified in the proposed plan. And so the idea is that we would progress getting development area plans based on what council see as best fit for the community. And then, yes, it would be a case that with that negotiation process, with the, well, maybe not negotiation, but in that consultation process with the property owners, it would be determined whether it's done through a variation process under the notified plan, or if it's delayed until after the plan is operative and they do it as a private plan change. But they would have a full suite of plans ready to go, and they would have their development set and ready, effectively.
Two of the landowners that own a reasonable chunk have indicated a strong interest in developing the land. But other than that, we have no further undertakings on their part about contributions.
Councillor Jackson.
Just had a couple of questions to ask just about the budgeting. I'm not quite sure on, and hopefully you can put me straight on this. So the initial budget was 250K. The preferred tender is 628K, so that means a shortfall of around about 380, but you're only asking for 280 of unbudgeted expenditure, so I couldn't work out what that other 100,000 was.
So the life of the project will go into next financial year, into the 2024-25 financial year. So there is, or at least there was budget identified for that next financial year. There's just not enough for this year. So.
Councillor Pye.
I just had a couple of questions. The report at point 6 refers to a growth management strategy review of 2022. It would have been helpful if that was linked to the report, because I had to actually ask Councillor Scott for that last night and found that. But in that report, which was also done by plans, they made a recommendation that appears to have not been taken up by council, and so I just wonder, did we not think they gave the right advice, or what was the reasoning for not? Because they recommended, rather than having FDAs, having GUZs, and I wonder why we're going back to a company if we didn't take their advice the first time. It's probably my question, and then I have another one after that.
Yeah, it's more of a proposed plan.
Thanks, Councillor Pye. Top of my head, not sure without reading the report, but I would imagine that it relates to the regional policy statement and the national planning framework and the likelihood of being able to zone it directly. Because to change the zoning, we would have to provide the infrastructure anyway. And in the absence of a developer who's willing to meet those costs, it would fall on council if they wanted to change the zone. So I think the idea of the FDAs was to signal where we anticipate future growth, and that would be subject to a number of conditions being met, one of which was a development area plan.
So wouldn't have they been privy to that at the time? So I'm just struggling to understand why they gave you that advice if it wasn't the right advice, and then why we want to go and use them for another project. I guess that's what I'm struggling with there. But my other question also is, in our proposed district plan, in the schedule of the FDAs, it says that we were going to do the development area plan for FDA 10 as well at the same time as FDA 2, yet this report doesn't contemplate that. So are we not? And that was within the 5-year period, because I just had a quick look. So it's a development plan that was supposed to be within 5 years.
FDA 10 is
It's the
Temuka Thomas?
Kellens Heights West.
Kellens Heights West,
Yeah.
yeah. So that area, because it's deemed rural lifestyle, is potentially under the highly productive land NPS. Might be an issue on rezoning that as rural lifestyle, even because it's 5 years out. So there are some issues with that land being included, but with the servicing up this catchment, up the Taitariki Creek catchment, there should be an ability to service that land just by continuing on. And because it's rural lifestyle, the density is far, far less than residential, so the capacity can be worked into the network.
Do we still think it's a good idea to have rural lifestyle that close to the town boundary?
Depends on the individual, councillor, and some planners, not many actually, would say yes, most will say no. Rural lifestyles, effectively, if you get a mosaic of landowners, it becomes very difficult to then rezone and do anything meaningful with it in terms of urban growth. What the two FDAs that are under consideration here do is they do meet a lot of the regional policy statement or the regional and national planning framework. They do meet a lot of the criteria there, so there is a strong likelihood that a private plan change or through the district plan review process, their land could be rezoned. And some of the other FDAs are a little more, not high risk, but they're somewhere in there unknown as to how they'll sit in a future planning framework in particular, because we don't know whether the national government, they've said they're going to repeal the resource management reform program, but we don't know to what extent, we don't know what that means, and we don't know what direction they might take. So they were on the table, the MPS for highly productive land came in and they were off the table, half the FDAs, and they may incrementally come back into being able to be progressed, I don't know. But we are in a bit of a flux, but what we do know is FDA 1 and 2 fit the current plan framework, more or less.
So sorry, just following up from a conversation around the council table a few weeks ago about the Kennells Road development. So this is, other than it wasn't the priority on the council schedule, it's in the exact same situation, isn't it? So if we chose to do a development area plan on that one, it's still in the same framework.
It's not an FDA though, it's outside of the FDA.
I thought most of that was an FDA.
It
I thought
is.
it was
The
just
Kennells
not as
Road.
priority.
There's an FDA there at the minute that's we've called urban, for urban growth. So whether it's residential or industrial will be led by demand. But it was beyond the 10-year horizon. So when the MPS for highly productive land dropped on us, they took it off out of play. What we're saying is with a new government and a strong policy indication that they're going to wind some of that stuff back, it may change again, yeah.
But sorry, that request for variation is, it's outside of the FDA though, isn't it? To the side?
It is, but to make, well, it's the officer's opinion that
Yeah.
for it to be viable in terms of investing, you would want to zone the whole FDA as well as the extra on the corner.
Right.
Because there would be an investment required, I don't know, it's in the millions, it might be a couple of million or something, I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
that's been looked at the moment because we've been asked to look at it. So it's significant anyway. So to make it viable and to future-proof growth for Timaru, whether that is residential or industrial, we wanted it to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
To that extent, yeah.
But we have also been told from the trustees who oversee that land that there's no likelihood of that being developed anytime soon.
That would be a factor that
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
considered if that idea is progressed or not. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess back to this item of business, effectively because it sits within the FDA, it's us fronting the debts, which is fine, and I guess our ability to get some of that money back is through FCs, DCs later on, isn't it, if we're of the will to recoup some of that cost.
Yep.
Yeah. So any further discussion? And obviously, it is operating funding, so it'll have effect on rates for the next financial. Some time out, we're already making decisions that affect rates, so there you go. Councillor Booth, you look like you're ready to go.
Yeah, I guess, we need to be looking forward and always looking forward and working towards freeing up land and enabling things to happen. And so you mentioned here it's going to enable 800 sections potentially in its lifetime. Obviously, it's important that we actually continue some form of continuity to ensure that we've got stuff coming on stream for our developers, etc. And it's probably in the some of it's in the, I guess, low grade, but some of it's actually quite high grade as well, and not as easy as perhaps one might think to do, but certainly we need to be seen to be doing and continuing with enabling growth within South Canterbury, or in Timaru and our region. So, and you look at it from that point of view, it's an investment of $1,000 per section for us now. So I'm sort of happy enough to move it.
Thanks, Councillor Booth. Appreciate you moving that. And so my question, only just to get clarity around this, because this is quite specialist work, isn't it? Plans Consulting, effectively a consulting company, $630,000. We don't have in-house capability, just for the record, that can achieve this, or to get us to a point where we would have in-house capability would, if someone could talk to that, just for those viewers out there that would be interested.
The level of specialty reports that are necessary for the development area plan are quite complex, from ecological assessments to transport assessments to stormwater management plans. And so we currently don't have the in-house resource, and that's just a small portion. There's about 10 or 12 different reports that we'll be looking at, they'll produce, and for us to review and confirm to eventually build into that development area plan.
Thank you, appreciate that. I think it's just important that we tell the story and people understand what our capability is in-house to be able to deliver some of these things. So I've got a mover. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Burt. So any further discussion or questions? No. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So that was unanimous. Appreciate that, Kevin and Paul. Thanks for all the work that goes into that. And I guess not taking account that there will be a lot of officer work involved with those still outside of the consultants. Alrighty. So we've got also the adoption of the annual report. We are going to adjourn. Did you want to speak to that at all?
I can briefly, Your Worship. So yes, the annual report is the team we'll seek an adjournment. We're still working with Audit New Zealand to get clearance on it. I suggest we adjourn till 4 o'clock. Happy to take questions while we go and work to get final clearance. Touch wood, fingers crossed on that item, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. So any questions on that? Before we do that, we've got a couple of, we'll go now to Mine and Nature. So the Mine and Nature item, and I think we'll just have a follow-up. This was just a phone call that came in regard to flight cancellations. I do note in the annual report, I think the last year numbers were up, but numbers as far as passengers numbers were up, but cancellations were up as well. So flights were down. I assume that's mainly in New Zealand. I know you're not in that position now, Matt, but you might be able to nod. So the request was from a member of the public. They had concerns that it was quite frequent. So I just, as an action point, suggest that we have Mr Dixon follow up with Air New Zealand on that item, because it does come up from time to time as far as flight cancellations. Yeah, Bede.
Thanks, Your Worship. We do have this conversation with Air New Zealand from time to time, and just so that people are aware, Air New Zealand, right, even at the level of the Chief Executive, are aware of the cancellation. What I think gives it the amplification is that we don't have as many flights in and out as other flight sectors do. And so if there's a cancellation, then it's harder for them to load it. If you're flying Wellington to Nelson or Nelson to Christchurch or something like that, there are other flights where they can then put people on it. So that is one of it. One of the issues, the last time we looked at the numbers on a percentage basis, we were pretty much the same as all of their, sitting within the Air New Zealand number. But we will follow it up again, but we know that they are also conscious of it and work quite hard to minimise the disruption in and out of this sector.
Brilliant. Thank you. Any points of clarity, questions on that? Everyone's okay. Righty, so now